I'm Charles Duffy, and this is Political Pulse. Tonight we're honored to have Mayor Martin O'Malley from Baltimore. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Charles, good to be back.
You're a full-time mayor and then some. You're crisscrossing the state, maybe headed for that governor's race. What do you think the issues are going to be important to people in the next governor's race? What are you hearing out there? What do you think is going to be important?
Well, what I'm hearing, regardless of what part of the state I'm in, is a real longing that people in Maryland have to move forward. You know, we are not a people who typically wallow in fear or the politics of division or accept the notion that we can only go so far and no further. So, you know, whether I'm in Hagerstown or Salisbury or Montgomery County, you know, a lot of the issues really are the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, people have a tremendous amount of anxiety as well as hope for improving education for our children, for protecting the health of the Bay and our natural environment, for improving our system of transportation, and for making Maryland, you know, that sort of job generator for all of the future jobs that our assets portend that we should have. And it's, I think, my sense, you know, across the state is that people sense that we're adrift and they want to get moving again.
Mm-hmm. We've had the lieutenant governor on the show, the governor's chief of staff, and I'm convinced that his campaign is going to be simple. It's going to be a simple mantra. I can just hear the commercials. You know, I took over and there was a huge deficit. We've turned it into a surplus. I've held the line on sales taxes and income taxes. The Democrats in 2004, the Democratic House tried to push through a $700 million income and sales tax hike. I'm committed to starting the ICC. I mean, it's going to be a simple mantra. And it's going to resonate with a good number of voters throughout the state. But what do you think about that simple mantra?
Well, I think the mantra is simple and the vision is limited. And I don't think that the people of Maryland are content with a limited vision for their future. The governor himself said that when you're a Republican in Maryland, you don't make big plans for the future. And that's the sort of administration we have. But, you know, in the course of this campaign, we will talk honestly about the taxes that the governor has raised. He's raised everybody's registration fee. He's raised the flush tax ostensibly to pay for cleaning up the Bay, and yet has cut other funds that were supposed to also go to clean up the Bay. Mm-hmm. He has raised everyone's property tax statewide in a move that he could not get through the legislature, but had to do in a sort of backdoor fashion through the Board of Public Works. In addition to that, I mean, you look at the condition that our schools are in and the sort of cuts that have happened to our capital school budget. I mean, there is no reason why as many children as we have should be going to school in crumbling classrooms or in trailers. There is no reason why increasingly more and more of us are robbed of the quality of life we should be spending, quality time we should be spending with our families, because we're backed up on 270 or 495 because of our inability to move forward on a truly statewide vision for transportation. You know, you look at those issues as well as the issues of health care, as well as the fact that, you know, the investments that had gone on in years past to our institutions of higher learning that allows us to be a strong state have been cut. I think the governor's going to have a difficult time selling the people of Maryland now for a second time on a very minimalist vision, a vision that says I will do no harm, when in fact many of the things that we value are being harmed by inaction.
But don't you think a simple message sometimes resonates for voters who are very busy in their own lives? And you just, you know, you just named off 5 or 6 or 7 different issues which are complicated in their own right, but don't you think that minimalist issue, kind of, you know, people who pay attention to the governor's race, you know, like a month before, a couple weeks before, maybe that's going to work?
Charles, that assumes that people are simple and that people want the simple message and that people are content with things as they are rather than imagining things as they can be. The fact of the matter is that Maryland can do better, and Marylanders know that we can do better. Maryland should not be content with backsliding or being among the mediocre of the 50 states. We should be leading all states in this nation. And that's really what this campaign is going to be about. Do you or do you not believe that Maryland can do better? Do you or do you not want a state that is leading the nation rather than slipping into mediocrity? That's really what this campaign is going to be about.
And he just signed some of his vetoes, and I wanted to talk about
a couple.
A lot of vetoes, and a couple of them, the minimum wage, and I had the Chief of Staff, Steve Krzeski, on, and I predicted that he would not veto the minimum wage bill, and I was surprised that he did. And the other one I wanted to talk to you about was the Walmart bill, and that says that if there's a company of more than 10,000 employees in Maryland, they have got to spend, I guess, 8% of their revenues on health care.
Or, stated another way, they should not be transferring the cost of health care onto the taxpayers.
Very good.
So we want to talk about those two things.
What do you think about those vetoes?
Yeah, there were a number of vetoes that I didn't understand. I do not understand why it was necessary to veto the minimum wage. I mean, the minimum wage has not been raised in Maryland for many, many years. It was not something that was going to drive businesses out of Maryland. It was something that would invest in spending in Maryland and invest in hardworking people that are doing the responsible thing and working out there sometimes in minimum wage jobs to put food on the table. With regard to the fair share health care plan, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we have responsible companies like Safeway and Giant who are forced to compete on an unlevel playing field with companies like Walmart. And what the bill in essence said was that a large company with 10,000 or more employees should not be permitted to shove their employees into Medicaid and sign them up for taxpayer-sponsored, health care and get away with that windfall that then goes into a store's ability to lower the cost of a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. That if Safeway and Giant can be responsible, can care for their employees and do the right thing by their employees, that other large employers should do the same thing. Was it a solution to the healthcare challenge that we face as a country and as a state? No, it wasn't the solution, but it was a step in the right direction. It was progress, and to veto it is a step in the wrong direction.
About a year ago, your city was at the crossroads. The state was dangling a $43 million amount of money there to help your schools, and you either had to accept it or really say, we're going to make it on our own. The city is, and that was about a year ago or so. How are you doing now?
We're doing great, and more importantly, our kids are doing great. When I started, when I volunteered to do the job of mayor of Baltimore and serve the people of Baltimore, there was not a single grade in our public school system where a majority of students scored proficient in reading and math. Now, we look at the last few years of progress, our first graders, a majority of them are now scoring proficient in reading and math. Majority of our second graders, majority of our third graders, and this year we just learned a majority of our fourth graders. With regard to the finances of our school system, the legislature, in stepping up to the state's responsibility to provide an adequate education for children in every jurisdiction in our state, would do so only if the city of Baltimore gave up political control over our school system. That was something done by Mayor Schmoke in 1997 with a heavy heart, I might add, because I think he sensed that if they were cast out into this unaccountable zone where they didn't have to do monthly closeouts, that it could bring some problems with it. And indeed it did. We went to the governor and asked him to help us with a workout plan to tweak the city-state partnership in order to correct the finances of our school system. And the governor decided that he would not do that unless we gave up the last vestiges of control that parents have in Baltimore over their children's education. So we stepped up, we did it ourselves. One of the bond rating agencies, Fitch, as a result of our having to, in essence, wipe out our rainy day fund in order to bail out our school system, put us in a negative outlook. Within the last couple of weeks, Fitch not only removed the negative outlook, they reaffirmed our A+, and they also said that we had done a remarkable job in turning around the finances of the school system in a short period of time. So I'm very proud of the hard work that the administrators and people in our administration have done, but I'm even prouder of my kids for scoring higher and higher.
It's something, I mean, it was a year ago, and last week in the Wall Street Journal, there was a very favorable article on Baltimore is making a comeback. People are investing in the the houses over there. Time magazine, I think, had a favorable article. And you either have very good PR people or somebody's doing a good job over there.
It all follows the results. It all follows the results, Charles. We have put together a coalition, very diverse in our city, a majority African-American city with a wide range of incomes like any big American city. But we have come together and we have stayed together around promoting the justice agenda. What is that? That means making our city a safer, cleaner, healthier place, a better place for kids to grow up. And when you do those two things and have the nation-leading results like we've had on violent crime, cutting it in half in 6 years. Even our stubborn homicide rate, we've been able to cut that by almost 20% compared to the 6 years prior to my taking office. When you do those things and make a city safer, cleaner, healthier, better place for kids, the private investment comes back in. So when someone like the Wall Street Journal says that, that's a real shot in the arm of credibility for us.
I'm going to read you a quote from last year when you were at the crossroads, when the city was at the crossroads. We had somebody in the Montgomery Gazette, Blair Lee, who's a political commentator. Here's the quote he made concerning you and the city. He said, "Perhaps he'll pull it off, but no matter what Martin O'Malley is going to spend the next 2 years working, he's going to be on a very tight rope, tight rope without a net. If he's successful, he can skip running for governor and aim squarely for the White House. He'll deserve it." Are we hearing about a skipping of the governor's race? Are you going to go right to the run for the White House?
I don't know. Were it not for the qualifications, that'd be some of the nicest thing Blair Lee ever said about anybody in Baltimore.
The jury's still out. I mean, you're still in progress. You're not there. You're not
absolutely.
You're not where you want to be.
No, by no means are we where we want to be. The work of an American city and making a great American city better is a work that's never done in any one person's lifetime, Charles. But I'm very, very proud of our progress. It is nation-leading progress. There are very few major cities in America that can boast the rate of improvement of test scores of its kids or the rate of reduction of violent crime that the people of Baltimore can boast. So yes, we still have a long way to go, but we're going there very quickly, and we're doing it by the great American way of having mutual respect for one another, being open and honest about our problems as well as our hopes, and pulling people together around the things that unite us, and which is a better future for our kids.
Can you compare Baltimore City to other places in the state, such as, for instance, Montgomery County? I mean, can you make a comparison? I mean, are they apples and oranges, or are they apples and apples?
I think that human nature is the same regardless of what jurisdiction of our state you're in, and regardless of what country you're in on this planet. I mean, we all want our piece of this earth to be a healthier, safer, better place that we can leave to our kids. So in that sense, yes, you can make comparisons. Now, the problems that the public policy choices that confront people who live in Montgomery County, where I grew up, when I lived here in the 70s, 80s, 60s, it was one of the strongest counties in America, still is, and needs to continue to be. So the problems may be different. The hierarchy of the things that rub people the wrong way and hold them back may change, but basically the aspirations are pretty similar.
We're going to have to take a break. We'll be right back with Mayor Martin O'Malley from Baltimore. Thank you. We're back on Political Pulse with Mayor Martin O'Malley of Baltimore, and I know you're very concerned with the Pimlico racetrack in Baltimore. Trainers are going out of state now. Breeders are going out of state. You're worried about the Preakness leaving the state.
Right. This is the slots question. There are about 18,000 jobs, Charles, in the state of Maryland that are horse and racing related jobs. All of the other states around us, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, allow their racing industry to offer slots at the tracks. I have had the same position on this issue for the 4 or 5 years that we've been kicking it around in Maryland. I think it's sad that we haven't been able to come together in a spirit of compromise and mutual respect to put this issue behind us, because there's many others, I think, that are far more important to people. Someone once asked me at an event actually in Montgomery County, how do you justify the morality of advocating slots even on a limited basis at the tracks? And I come down on the morality of it in this way. There are many people who are working very hard in horse-related industries, including some single parents that work at Pimlico to put bread on their families' tables, to do the right thing, to hold down a job. And in our state, we think jobs are important, and those 18 jobs are important. I suppose
18,000.
I'm sorry, 18,000 jobs are important. And I suppose there's a way that we could look at this and have a debate about whether we want to subsidize those jobs, as we do when we try to attract other corporations to come to Maryland or expand in Maryland, whether we want to subsidize those with other tax dollars, or whether we want to allow them to offer in a very limited and state-controlled way the same sort of alternative gambling slots that's offered at tracks at all the surrounding states. I might also add that for those of us who proclaim to be absolutely against slots on a moral basis. There is a tremendous amount of money that's raised in our state from lottery and Keno, and none of those dollars ever get returned by county executives of other jurisdictions because of their moral outrage about gambling. I'd like to see us come together in a spirit of compromise and put this behind us. Sadly, I don't think the governor really wants this settled as much as he wants to be able to campaign on it again.
Well, do you see Pimlico and racetracks like Laurel weakening? Do you see breeders going out of state? Do you see trainers going out of state? And I note that Pimlico and Laurel used to be thought of as major racetracks in the
absolutely.
East Coast.
Absolutely, that's happening. Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, virtually all of the surrounding states are drawing more and more of those jobs out of our state every day. And it's too bad. You know, we have a 130-year tradition in our state with the Triple Crown and the Preakness and Pimlico. It could be stronger, and we need to resolve this issue. We need to move forward.
And we're taping this on June 6th, which of course is the anniversary for D-Day. And I was actually just in New Orleans, and I went to the D-Day Museum. But just amazing the sacrifices that our veterans have made. And it takes a day like this for people really to remember.
Right. You know, my father fought in the Second World War. My father's a veteran of that conflict and member of what has been called the greatest American generation. He flew 33 missions over Japan in a B-24 Liberator, was a bombardier. Actually was an eyewitness to Hiroshima as he was flying back from a mission over Nagasaki. So, you know, I'm blessed, and we're glad that our dad just celebrated his 80th birthday, and he's still with us. But the spirit of sacrifice that moved Americans in that time to change the history of the world for the better it continues to inspire. And you know, the more we can repeat those lessons to our kids, the better our country will be.
And there's 18, 19-year-old kids still making sacrifices for the country now in Iraq. And sometimes it just amazes me the randomness of things. And at that museum in New Orleans, I saw bodies, floating in the ocean, and you wonder how it just happens. Somebody gets killed, unfortunately, and other people move on, and they live their lives. They have families and that type of thing. But do you ever think about the randomness of life?
I think about it all the time. In my job in the city of Baltimore, I'm close to a lot of really noble human acts of kindness and courage. I'm also close to a lot of tragedies. And I also have some dear friends that are in Iraq right now, including Bob Maloney, whose son will celebrate his 2-year birthday in the next couple of months without his dad here. And we pray and we trust that he'll be home come September. But he was number 2 in my fire department, sort of the aide-de-camp to our fire chief, if you will, before he was called up. And he has a deeply felt sense of duty that drew him to serve as he had signed up to serve.
And I know it's not a state issue, but Iraq is a very difficult issue for the country. And I read where there's no industries going in there. Really, the only jobs over there are for security. And it really looks like the United States might have to be in there for the long haul. I mean, I'm not sure if you agree or disagree.
Well, I think we've heard members of President Bush's cabinet. I think we've heard John McCain talk in terms of decades, 20 and 30 years. We had our disagreements, and there were a lot of doubts going into that war. No doubt history will wonder whether or not we went into that war with good intelligence, with bad intelligence, or with manipulated intelligence. But the fact of the matter is that we are there now, and we need to support our troops, and we need to try to make this tragic situation right as we move forward. I don't think any Americans hold out an aspiration for our nation to be an imperial power, to be an occupying or colonial power. We're a republic, and a republic is totally antithetical to an empire. And I think what most Americans want, and I think what they're willing to sacrifice and pay for, is a way honorably to try to rebuild what has been torn down by a dictator and by this conflict, and to show the rest of the world that we are still a good, decent, and moral people who respect other human beings throughout the planet.
move on to a different subject. Who has had a big influence on your life? And I would just first like to say, do you see any elected officials out there that you kind of, respect greatly, or who do you respect the most? And then non-elected officials also.
There are a lot of people who have had an influence on my life. I worked for Senator Barbara Mikulski in her very first U.S. Senate campaign. I was her field director in 1986, and proud to be able to tell my daughters that I helped elect the first woman.
That was a heck of a race.
To the United States Senate. Yes, she's a fighter and a good person, and we're lucky to have her as a U.S. Senator. There have been other people who have inspired me. I thought that Gary Hart and his campaign of ideas in 1984 and his call for energy independence in the United States and his cautionary words that are still so profound and prophetic today, that we either have to develop an independent energy source or risk being bogged down in a series of desert wars. I find a lot of inspiration actually from other mayors who are doing one of the toughest jobs in America.
Job.
Lyndon Johnson said one time to a close aide, he said, whenever I get overwhelmed with the responsibilities of the office of the president, I take comfort in the fact that at least I'm not a big city mayor.
That's funny, isn't it?
So my colleagues who are out there on the front lines of the battle between justice and injustice in all of America's cities, they inspire me and encourage me.
And do you think about the energy issue? Do you think about an alternative energy source like you said that Gary Hart was talking about?
Sure. Do I have a solution? I'm a simple country lawyer. I'm a generalist by practice. I don't have the brain power that so many people in our state do. But there is one nation on the planet that has the diversity and the wealth of institutions of higher learning and PhDs that I think is the nation that has both the responsibility and the opportunity to discover that. And we better discover it and harness it quickly, because the industrialization of behemoths like China, India, and other developing nations in the world is something that really threatens the whole ecosystem on this planet. And America has both the responsibility and the opportunity to harness a new independent source of energy.
How about non-politicians? Who would you say has a great deal of influence on your life?
Non-politicians?
Yeah.
Through history or through the present?
Just in your life. In your life.
My mom, my dad, my wife Katie, who is an amazingly well-grounded person who reminds me all of the time that whatever you accomplish in your chosen vocation or profession means absolutely nothing if you don't raise your children well. And so my wife inspires me. My wife influences me.
Where did you get bit with the political bug?
I grew up in a household and in a family here in Montgomery County where my parents both met splicing together a Young Democrats newsletter in D.C. My mom's father had been a county chair in Fort Wayne, Indiana during the Roosevelt years. My dad's dad had been a ward leader in the great city of Pittsburgh in the
which
David
is where
Lawrence
I'm from,
years.
of course.
And so I grew up in a household where we were told that public service was a noble and a good thing, and that more good people needed to do it. So my father always encouraged us to be involved, whether it was working for a candidate or however that we needed to be actively involved in the political life of our state, our county, our country.
Bill Clinton former President Bill Clinton passed through Baltimore, and I read in the paper where you two sat down and you met and for 90 minutes, and we don't have that much time for you to relate what all you talked about, but can you give us a couple snippets of what you guys discussed?
Sure. It's funny, I went to the Preakness last year and President Clinton had gone last year, and I missed him by a little bit, and the man at the door, as he was holding the door for me to walk in, he said, "Mr. Mayor, you missed President Clinton by 5 minutes." I said, "Sir, I miss him every day." And as we sat there in the presidential suite at the Hyatt, I was pointing out to President Clinton the things that he had invested in as president that have really helped Baltimore make its comeback and make its rebound. I pointed out the empowerment zones. I talked about the $40 million Labor Department grant to invest in the work skills of young people in the city. I talked about the COPS grant, where President Clinton helped us put 200 additional police officers on our street that enabled us to turn around our crime situation and get it headed in the right directions. So those are the things that we talked about. We also talked about the Democratic Party and the need to call forth the better angels of the American electorate, those things about us that encourage us to invest today for a better tomorrow for our kids.
Do you see the party gaining some of those red states in the next, or some of those senatorial seats that they need next time?
I think it's possible. I think it is not possible if we try to become a milder version of the Republican Party. I think that is a mistake that some consultants had some of our national leaders make in elections past. And I think what the people of our country and are looking for is leadership for the future. That sort of leadership that says that we are actually and can be stronger together if we but have courage to summon up, the innovation and that spirit of sacrifice to imagine a better future and to challenge our people to go and achieve it. There are some today who practice the politics of fear and division, and they do it very well. And as a party, we should not fall into the trap of trying to, get bogged down into the counterpunch of fear and division and the politics of personal destruction. We need to talk about those aspirations and those values that truly unite people, bring them together, and allow us to do great things in the future, just as our country's done great things in the past.
How do you do it? You're a full-time city mayor, and you're getting around the state, maybe headed towards that governor's race. But where do you get the energy? Are you sleeping?
I'm sleeping.
You are?
I consider myself very lucky and very blessed to have been able to have the privilege, really, of being able to serve as the mayor of the city of Baltimore. And at the same time, I've also seen a wealth of potential just waiting to be tapped in the people of our city as well as the people of our state. And what drives me is that realization. There are not many people who are privileged enough to have had the perch that I have to see the goodness and the strength that exists in our state. And so that fuels me, and that gives me the energy to keep going and to help Maryland once again hold the line against the cynicism that says our best days are behind us.
About 30 seconds left. I know one of the big issues, and I'm sorry to hit you with this at the end, but Homeland Security. How's that looking for as a big city mayor?
Yeah, Homeland Security. We've made some progress. The progress really depends on the commitment of the local executive and in a city and a region. We are still kind of stumbling backwards into the future, thinking that this is something driven primarily by governors. It is not driven primarily by governors, though governors certainly have a leadership role to play, but it's something that needs to be driven primarily by the mayor and the region of the metropolitan economies that are under threat. And still have a chronic lack of funding, really, for a superpower. But hopefully we'll address that as we move forward as a country.
We're going to have to leave it there, Mayor. Thanks very much
Charles,
for
thank
coming.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us on Political Pulse. Remember, if it's Tuesday night at 9:30 or Thursday night at 9, it's Political Pulse on Channel 16. We'll see you next week.